Good evening. The Planning and Zoning Commission is an independent advisory body of the City of Ames City Council. Planning and Zoning Commission members are volunteers of the community and not part of the city administration. The Planning and Zoning Commission is supported by staff from the city's planning division. The commission is responsible for recommendations on matters involving subdivisions, annexations, master plans, and major site development plans, amendments to the zoning ordinance, and comprehensive plan amendments. We make a recommendation based on city codes, the facts presented, and input from the public. As an advisory commission, we welcome all comments regarding the proposed item. Please direct your input to the commission. If the proceedings become lengthy, we may ask that the comments be focused on new information not previously presented. You may speak only once on an agenda item. If you wish to speak, please fill out a speaker information card over at the podium and present it to the recording secretary in back, Eileen. We ask that you come to the microphone to speak so that all comments may be recorded. The order of the proceeding for each item on the agenda will be as follows. City staff will present the staff report regarding the agenda item. Commission members will have an opportunity to ask questions of city staff. The applicant will be invited to make a statement regarding the request. Commission members will have an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant. Members of the audience will be invited to come forward to offer comments and questions. Once the public comment period is closed, city staff and the applicant will have an opportunity for concluding remarks. The commission will discuss the application based on all presentations and any comments given and come to a recommendation for city council. The discussion may include further questions of city staff and the applicant for clarification. With that, we will move to the first item on the agenda, which is introduction of the commissioners. We'll go from right to left.
Julie Winter.
Mike Clayton.
Mike Sullivan.
John Emery.
Mike LaPetra.
Matthew Voss.
All right. And with that, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Move on to approval of the minutes of May 3rd, 2023. Take a motion to approve the minutes.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Now we move on to the public forum, which is a chance for the public to offer comment on anything unrelated to the agenda. Is there anyone who'd like to make any comments for the public forum? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Public hearing on a rezoning with master plan for 4098 East 13th Street.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm Justin Moore. I'm the case planner. We'll be doing the presentation tonight. So the item that you have before you is a request to rezone the property there that you see highlighted in blue up on the screen from its current designation of planned industrial, which is labeled PI, with a overlay, which is known as the Northeast Gateway Overlay, which carries with it some design standards. The request is to take it from that and rezone it to general industrial, which here on the next one is shown as GI, and to remove the OG&E overlay. And this is all being done with a master plan. So there will be a eventual master plan finalized prior to city council that will that we outline for you in the addendum, and that will carry with it some basic stipulations on site design with regard to compatibility, mostly with the building appearance, also some landscaping and setback requirements on the front of the building as well, or up to the front of the building. And it will also dictate the general arrangement of the buildings and circulation on the site, which is attached there in your report as well. So I'll go through the proposal real quick and just kind of give an overview of the site. So a little bit of the history here. This was originally rezoned to its current industrial classification back in the right around 2009. And at that time, previous to that time, it had been the PRC commercial classification that you see there to the west. This was rezoned to industrial then, the PI designation, and it maintained the OG&E overlay on it. The original vision up here in the early 2000s was for a regional mall. And so as things changed and plans changed, the zoning on this property changed later on. So the request to change it to GI specifically is to allow for greater use of the site for the proposed building coverage or building allowance on the site. So the master plan proposal, which you have there, that I'll go to, it shows a two building proposal here. And that is for two larger warehouses here on this main site. There will be a future site which will be divided off that will have two smaller buildings on it, which will potentially contain industrial service or office uses. In the master plan, we are stipulating that the two on the larger site, that this remain a warehouse use. And then it is restricted to industrial service and office uses on the smaller sites there to the west. So the site will be served with water and sewer. Water is currently adjacent to the site to the west here along the west property line. It does come from the west along East 13th Street. So it is adjacent to the site and ready to serve the site. The sewer will be constructed later this year in the East 13th Street right away. It will come from the west and it will come to about approximately the 570th Street intersection. And that's being done with a city project. And the developer, once they develop the site, they'll be required to eventually continue the sewer across the front of the site to the east end. Also, as you can see there, stormwater being provided for stormwater detention there to the southwest. To the north and east, that land is outside of the city limits. Also, this small property right here currently, that is also outside of the city. On our land use analysis that we did there, we did indicate what the future land uses are to the east and north outside of the city. The land use to the east is an employment classification, which is the same as what this current property is inside the city. And that is designed for business and industrial development. To the north across the road, in the future, there's a future land use envisioned, which is a RN4. And that is a residential land use that would eventually allow for, if developed, a mixture of residential type uses, higher density residential there to the north. And that's one of the things that we kind of have in mind, among other things, the future commercial to the immediate west with the OG&E overlay, and also consideration for the residential to the north when you think about those building facade characteristics, the setback from the street with the landscaping and those sorts of things. It was important to take those into consideration. And as we talked with the developer, we were able to get to a place where we agreed on what the master plan characteristics would be. And we talk about that in the areas out of the comprehensive plan that we attached as well when we talk about compatibility with future sites or existing sites that differ in use. So I think at this point that covers the bulk of what I wanted to say, and I can take any questions at this point on anything that you might have in the report.
What's the little bump in there? I cannot read what it says.
You're talking about this right
Yes.
here? Yep. So that is a that's a neighboring property. I think that's the property owner's name right there. Yeah, sorry about that. That's kind of difficult to read, but that is out in Story County. So the blue line right here essentially is the city limits.
Okay, and then the black line that goes around the outside, that's stormwater?
Property line.
Property line right here.
No, the thick black, no, down lower on this.
Oh, I'm sorry, this one right here?
Yeah, going all the way around the property.
Yep, so that's indicating the proposed area of detention.
Okay.
So one thing just to comment on, we don't do a lot of commercial or industrial master plans. Usually when you see a residential one, they're more of a bubble diagram with some streets and natural areas and connections that'll be done with that. When we look at commercial and industrial master plans, some elements of a site plan show up. So that's why you see a much more detailed plan here, but you can't take it to be that that's the exact grading plan for the site. It's meant to show the intent of the layout, the setbacks, the access points, and in general, that's how the site's expected to develop. So they'll have some latitude through the site plan process to work through details, but this does represent a significant amount of detail for how they would develop the site.
Can you talk a little bit about the OG&E overlay and that being removed and why that is acceptable in this situation, I guess?
So in this particular situation with the master plan and the requirements that we're putting with the master plan, we felt that addressed the still some of the spirit of the OG&E and the design intent, at least as far as it interfaced with some of the neighboring uses and the commercial property to the west. Given that the property is already an industrial zone that also does allow for some warehousing uses, taking it to another industrial zone isn't seen as a major critical issue. And again, since we have that master plan to be able to control it, and we'll have those facade details prior to council, that they will maintain some of the standards of the OG&E. So, and the OG&E was really meant to address the look and feel of a shopping center.
Thank you.
So is the removal of the overlay mainly for the use of the property then?
I think probably the best way to address that is that the removal of the overlay, yes, it does help the use somewhat. However, for the most part, the overlay, since it was intended to be commercial, going to a different industrial designation, we didn't see the necessity or the critical need for it here.
I would say that by agreeing to remove the overlay, you are facilitating the proposal you see here. Could it be done under the overlay? Maybe. It would have a lot of things done to those buildings that are not normally done for this type of project, but possibly it could be done, but definitely facilitates what you see on the screen tonight.
Thank you.
So I guess I have a question for what we see on the north side there. You've got the parking lot, and it looks like if this goes to GI, then they're proposing that it would require a 40-foot front yard setback from East 13th. So is that represented in that layout there?
So in this layout, actually, you have a much greater than 40-foot setback. We discussed that in some of the addendum details. So on this west site, there will be a requirement for a minimum of a 50-foot setback. And on this east site, we have that identified at approximately 175 feet. And what you don't see on here is there is proposed landscaping and some stormwater treatment up here in this area between the parking lot and the street. So there will be a setback. There will be an area of green space and detention up in here as well, and I believe some right here. So that we do see that as necessary to be able to provide that, I guess, that distance and that somewhat softening between the street and the other uses and the
Okay.
warehouses.
And it looks like that's something 15% of the area's landscaping is GI is required.
That's the minimum requirement in GI.
Okay. And then all that'll be hashed out in the final site
Correct.
plan. Okay.
Yep.
And down to the southwest part of the site, that's all retention?
Yeah, that's what they're showing is intended for that area. So that's just being identified. I don't know that'll be the exact grade of it or anything, but that will be the general location of the detention.
So out of the 15% of the site that isn't developed, how much of that would be retention? It looks like almost all of it.
So in terms of the 15% minimum requirement, that actually has to be green space or landscaped area. So if there is water in the detention pond, the surface of the water does not count toward that minimum landscape area.
So stormwater treatment can. So like in the East 13th area where you don't see a pond shown, you can have stormwater treatment features. It can be a dry detention facility that counts as landscape. It's only if it's a wet pond do we not count that as landscaped area. So there's going to be a mix of ornamental stuff and then the functional components of the stormwater.
And you talked on the original OG&E, it was planned for just a one building site. And then in there you talked, the new designation allows them to do multiple sites in there, multiple warehouses.
So the OG&E originally, that, I guess the best way to describe it, that is more about the full design requirements that were planned for the regional mall that was originally proposed here. The GI zoning is what allows the buildings to be arranged on the site so that they can utilize the site for more room for the buildings.
So I think what we described in the report was if it stayed PI, regardless of the overlay, you had, I think it was a 20%.
Correct.
Yeah, so you have more open space required. So to get an efficient footprint, they would have done probably one larger building. By having just a little more square footage, they were willing to break it into two buildings to try to divide up the site and address some of the massing issues that we had with the use in this area. So it's one of the few times we're getting more square footage is probably better for the site design, just because it gives them a reason to break up the buildings.
I know it's in the packet, but could you speak a little bit to how this use fits under the employment category in the Ames Plan 2040?
Sure. So the GI zoning district is intended for, planned for the employment category. And so the uses that fall within that zoning category would all be compatible with that. And again, that's a land use type that looks at, industrial business, jobs, that sort of thing. So yeah, it directly falls under and in support of employment.
I think this is in the packet somewhere else too, but just since we're talking about potential future residential use on the north side, I think I saw the proposed truck traffic somewhere, but do you have that for what the vehicle traffic would be for this?
Trying to recall if we did put that in the report or not.
I thought I saw 20. I can't.
Yeah, I believe we may have.
But I guess without getting into the specifics, then your recommendation for the department recommendation is that it's appropriate for.
Yeah, so that I see it's actually in the applicant statement,
Okay.
the 25 trucks per day. So that's what they predict their use would generate along with the employees there. Yeah, so for East 13th Street, that is what we would anticipate as being allowable or acceptable for the classification of street that it is.
Okay. If there are no other questions, thank you, Justin. We'll go on to the applicant.
Good evening, Commission. I'm John Gady. I'm with Fox Strand. I'm at 414 South 17th Street, right here in Ames. I'm here tonight representing the developers. We're really excited about this project. This is very unique for the city of Ames. And this is really, from the market research that was done, is really going to fill a need for this community, and especially a need for some of the local businesses in this town that need storage. storage for their businesses. So, we're talking about Danfoss, we're talking about Land O'Lakes, we're talking about Barilla that would utilize this type of facility. So our goal tonight is pretty simple. This property is zoned planned industrial. We want to get it to rezone to general industrial. It satisfies your 2040 land use plan. And why are we doing this? Why do we need to do this? And really, the existing zoning did meet what we were looking for. We could build almost a 640,000 square foot building. That's a really big building, or multiple buildings on what we're looking at is lot 1. These are 2 lots, but lot 1 is 42 acres. But the more we got looking into it is, then we would have outside storage, and it would just, stuff would be sitting outside, and the applicants would much rather see that inside. And so working with staff, we said, how can we achieve that goal of maximizing the amount of buildable footprint on this lot? So without having to go out and buy more land, right, and develop more farm ground, we're compressing our site and developing almost 900,000 square feet onto this site, and still meeting all the green space requirements and meeting all the stormwater requirements for the general industrial site. And working with staff too, we're also agreeing as part of the rezone to agree to certain conditions of the rezone, greater setbacks for this type of building. Really, in order to make this site work, we've pushed this thing back 200 feet from the East 13th Street right away. We're okay with some architectural requirements. These are going to be precast tilt-up panels. We're going to have bump outs and varying roof heights and architectural reveals and different colors, and of course, glass that will make this building not look just like a big square building. It's going to look really nice along this East 13th Street corridor. Back to the planned industrial, we could fit about 35% of a building on that area. This is looking at about 48%. So even though the code says something like 85%, practically we can get only so much building on this site. And so we're just no more than, less than 15% from that code requirement. I also wanted to mention, someone brought up the existing estate house that's out there. We have a purchase offer to buy that house. That house is in Story County. It is not within the city limits, but we've worked successfully with that property owner to acquire that property. So I mentioned the conditions of rezone were agreeance to the architectural standards, some increases for that, additional setbacks, agreeing to stormwater management, landscaping, and buffering. Somebody mentioned traffic, and we've completed a traffic impact study already for this. We're looking at probably 25 trucks per day. As part of the public improvements, the city would like us to install a 12-foot lane along the frontage of our property. Even without that, our traffic impact study has proven to us that we don't need any turn lane improvements off of East 13th Street because of the 25 trucks per day doesn't impact that. So with that, do you have any questions for us?
The purple up there on the 2 buildings on the left-hand side up the corner,
Yes,
are those for hazmat storage?
they're not for hazmat storage. So it's just purely conceptual. So tonight, I'm here representing the developers, and we're concentrating on this lot 1. I put together a master plan for lot 1 and lot 2. And so the purple buildings there are owned by the Elwell Corporation that also owns all of the past mall site, right? And so they would want to develop that site, and we left them more than 10 acres of land. So we've just shown how that potentially could develop, which matches to the west, their master plan, where they have maybe some retail. This could be some more industrial type for contractor use for those types of buildings. So I think it would blend in nicely with the proposed zoning to the west. And we're showing, my concept is to interconnect those. I don't know if you can see that little orange line there that interconnects the parking for the employees. And at the northwest corner of that site, right at 570th, there'll be an access drive to 570th there. So all that will help them improve the traffic for that development.
So the lot one is the orange, or,
That's correct.
okay. I just thought of separate buildings, like, I know 3M has a separate building for their dangerous stuff.
Okay, nope. We're just looking to develop right now lot one as part of the JT warehouse development.
The yellow.
That's correct.
And then lot two is the orange area then.
That's correct.
Okay.
We are sharing the stormwater management facility there. So that's a wet pond. We have some forebays to capture the silt. So we have to meet or exceed all the stormwater requirements for the city. But our intention is that the lots will work together for stormwater management.
Any other questions for, oh, go ahead.
Nope, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Gady.
Thank you.
At this time, we would invite anyone from the audience that would like to come up and fill out the card if they would like to offer comments on this agenda item.
We need to fill out a card. All right.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm Mark Gannon, and I manage the 80 to the north there, which you're talking about residential development. And so I just had questions from the owners as to, well, first of all, we've decided we're going to voluntarily annex that into the city, or at least try to. It sounds like that'd be very possible to do that. Sounds like you guys are already talking about it. How is this going to affect us financially? Is the road going to be widened? I mean, right now it's just basically a blacktop road with, I suppose, put on top of gravel. Is there going to be wider? We're going to get a better road? Is there a plan to change any of the road up there? Right now, to drain our farm, there's a tile that runs right through, well, you can see it behind that. See how blue, and that lane through that blue line up through there? That's a that's a tile that helps drain up there. And it also, we've got some tile that runs down through there that are completely covered by that subdivision. So we need to know how that's going to be taken care of. How are you going to route that around there? Route it under there? I don't know. Well, but that's not the best anyway. And Todd Reeder's never wanted to repair anything. So because of some of this is going to happen, why go to the trouble of fixing anything? So that's another one of our concerns, is that the drainage from the north, a lot of times that sits in the ditch, and it's really supposed to go to the west and then down that waterway that's shown there. Well, it's too high, so it sits in the road ditch until it can finally come out. I mean, that water comes over the road there on East 13th Street a lot of times because it can't get down that waterway now. And again, I'm not knocking Todd, but he didn't want to go to the trouble of making that ditch deeper so that you can drain the water to the south. And so I had never seen this thing to the left, but they got an amended floodplain and storm detention area. But if we're going to do anything up here, we at least got to get the water to the west and south, or have, the developers put an underground tile in there or something. I don't know what maybe they'd run it down the west side or the east side and down the ditch over to the creek. So anyway, I think that because the tile dumps, you can't even tell now where this stuff's at. It may dump out on the other side. I don't think so though. There's an open ditch down. Do you know where that is?
Are you talking about the southwest corner kind of the property?
Yeah, there's an open ditch that the tile dumps into down in that corner, down probably in that detention area. So, and I don't see a plan for how that's going to change. So I think we just need to look at what's going on in the other parts of the area and how this is going to affect it. And again, the city people have been out there, and we've talked about that area up there, because a lot of water comes from the north, and it comes over 13th Street many times right there, because there's not a big enough culvert underneath the road. So it comes over, and then it sits in the ditch, and then finally gets full, and then it will come down that waterway, but the waterway is too high. So there needs to be either a big main there, or actually make a good waterway that's low enough to drain that area. But again, I've talked to Todd in the past, and he just didn't want to go to the trouble, because you're taking development area away from him if you make a waterway out of it. So anyway, I just there's a whole impact up here that, because again, you can see that one waterway that's there now going right through where those buildings are. So we got to figure out where that's going and make sure we take care, because it's going to be needed if we do houses above. We got to think about this stuff. So that's kind of my main thing. And so is there anything planned to the west, or is that just a conceptual drawing too on Reeder's property? Or Reeder Elwell?
So what's shown to the west is not approved. It was a concept that the city looked at 3+ years ago, probably 4 years ago at this time. So the developer added that to help everybody understand the context of what's to the west potentially, and to deal with the floodplain, because it just barely touches this property. So they put that in there just for context. It is not an approved plan.
All right.
But it kind of represents some of the things that need to be dealt with development.
Well, I think that's some of the stuff we got to think about, because when the city people have said, well, we can't go on private property and, lower that waterway or something. But if we're going to do something like this, then we got to get a plan for the rest. At least a wastewater or surface water drainage, because we'd like to put more tile down from our property south, but this is going to block all that. So anyway, I'd just like to see a plan. We'd like to see a plan on how we plan to solve some of those, or, take those into account. And if there's any costs involved with roads or sewers that are going to be assessed to our property, we'd like to know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Okay. Well, with that, we'll close the public comment period. And then we'll have city staff and the applicant have an opportunity for any concluding remarks.
The applicant.
Okay. Any other remarks, Mr. Gady?
Sure. I think you bring up some good concerns. And of course, as an engineer, I'm really concerned about drainage. And so with this type of facility, we have to manage the stormwater. We have to manage the tiles that are from, coming onto the site. We cannot cause detriment to our neighbors. If we cause detriment to the neighbors, we're violating Iowa drainage law, which we cannot do. I'm not really aware of this large culvert on 13th Street that's off-site, that's had historical issues. I don't think it is a impact factor in this particular development. It is west of here. We are going to be adding a storm sewer along the East 13th Street right away. So we are filling in the ditch that might be causing some issues right now being flat, and we're making that an urbanized section on the south side with curb and gutter and storm sewer.
Thank you. All right. We have any discussion from the commission on this item?
I just wanted to add one comment. So at this stage, we do not have development details. So an actual stormwater management plan will be included with the subdivision of the site. So that's where you'll have the more specific information about we'll have a full stormwater management plan with what quantities of water are being addressed and the methods they're being treated and controlled. So that's a step in the process that's to come. Tonight, we wouldn't be able to tell you all those details.
That'll come back here. Or it'll go to city?
It'll be a preliminary plat because there's infrastructure improvements. It'll come here first and then go to city council.
So the storm sewer that you talked about along 13th Street, John, then that should be able to pick up the water that Mr. Gannon was talking about that's coming down from the north there through the property he represents.
In addition to all the on-site storm sewer improvements that we're doing.
Right.
So for instance, again, on that lot one, the orange, John, that you referenced, on the west side of that property line, in the future, when that lot develops, there's going to be a storm sewer that'll be ran all the way along that property line that'll discharge right into that wet pond.
Oh, okay.
So that'll be, 6 feet deep in the ground, can take care of any tiles associated with that. On the east side, I showed the contours on this concept plan so you can see that we're rerouting that drainage way through the diagonally through the property. So this has got to drain all that water that is coming to us from the northeast.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Discussion?
You said that this will be coming back to us. Is there any idea of when that would take place?
I think pretty quickly, this will go to council. This will go to council after tonight in June. And I believe they're going to be submitting a preliminary plat as quick as possible. They have an interest in breaking ground still this summer, this year.
Okay.
All right. Well, if there's no other discussion or questions, does anyone want to make a motion?
I guess I can do that. I'll make the motion that we recommend that City Council approve the request to rezone the property located at 4098 East 13th Street from PI, Planned Industrial, with the OG&E to GI, General Industrial, with a master plan, removing the OG&E with the following conditions. Finalized master plan details generally consistent with attachment D, limitations described within the addendum of this report, and to include building material and facade design elements prior to City Council approval of the rezone.
That's alternative one, correct?
Yeah.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. All right. Move on to commission comments.
Anything going on next time?
I think it's too early to say one way or the other.
All right. Any staff comments?
We did last week, we did complete the corrections update to Ames Plan 2040. So we did have that adopted by council. So it was a bunch of minor clarification items. The most significant language updates were really about the fringe plan. I mentioned that the fringe plan had expired on May 1st. So we were relying on the policies of Ames Plan 2040 for that management of the fringe area. So we kind of went in there and cleaned up how the references were to a plan that no longer exists. The policies are still there, but instead of like saying that a plan will implement them, the language is more about that the policies apply in the fringe area. And then there were edits to the land use map to correct different things from a variety. Some things that we thought would be corrected with the fringe plan update. Some things were within the city. Again, so if you're interested in those corrections, they were all cataloged in the council action form. But we do have a new Ames Plan 2040. It'll get through the printer here in the next couple of weeks, and we'll post a new clean version of it online here. So that's what we got.
All right.
Move for adjournment.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Adjourn.